Welcome to Compression, the quest to $100 million in just 1 year. Join me, your host, Logan Freeman, in this one-of-a-kind interactive podcast experience where I am on a quest to compress 3 years of achievement and production into 12 months. And no, the answer is not to just work harder. I'm bringing you not only ideas and concepts that are complete at the theoretical level, but they're also effective at the applied level. Look, guys, knowledge is not power. It is potential power. Knowledge plus massive strategic action equals power. We're talking about strategy, systems, accountability, all in real time. This is Compression. Welcome to a special edition of the Compression Podcast, where Jerome and myself are helping you to be up on game every single day. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. We are not covering real estate transactions, getting to the $100 million mark today per se. What we're going to do today is talk about questions that can change your life. If you want to change your life, change the questions that you're asking yourself. And we're actually going to start with a quote today from the late, great Mark Twain. Whenever you find yourself on the side of majority, it is time to pause and reflect. We're coming up on the halfway mark here, guys. And I am taking some time to reflect. You're going to see the volume of deals continue to increase. I closed one this week, so the number is actually higher than what you saw last week. We'll get into that next week. But what we're going to do is periodically on this podcast, take a step back, get an objective view, and look down at what we're doing. So at the end of June, you'll have a mid-year recap where Jerome and I are going to be talking about wins, losses, what we're going to do better for the next 6 months. But we're going to throw some of these fun, interactive kind of podcasts in here so you guys can hear and see kind of what I'm thinking about and what Jerome is thinking about. Jay, you ready to jump in?
Man, born ready. Fresh off the 6, still sweating, man. Change clothes, still sweating, you know?
Still sweating. Okay, if you guys are watching this, I got my Jocko shirt on. Discipline equals freedom. 0434 is the time that man wakes up every single day. And I'm beating him up by at least 34 minutes every day. But I got the shirt on. I'm supporting it. Maybe one day we'll have a compressor, line of apparel and shirts that I can wear around. I don't wear t-shirts all that much, to be honest with you. Jay rocks the t-shirts all day, every day, because that is his brand. Getting out of the rat race. But I don't enjoy t-shirts all that much. They don't fit me well. I got this big old barrel chest and they always flail out real funny. So they don't make me feel good about myself. So anyways, we're getting off topic a little bit. Tim Ferriss wrote a book, multiple books right behind me here. Tools of Titans, Tribe of Mentors, 4-Hour Body, 4-Hour Chef, 4-Hour Work Week. I'm sure he's got a few others. This man is a master craftsman at asking questions. If you've listened to his podcast, which, is not an easy podcast always to listen to because it's at least 90 to 120 minutes, but he does have the best of the best guests and he is an incredible interviewer. And what he did was aggregate kind of 17 questions throughout all of his interviews that he's talked with people into a PDF. And it's called The 17 Questions That Changed My Life. And what Jay and I today are going to go through is I'm going to pose some of these, my favorite questions out of some of these. And we're just going to go through those. So, Jerome, I'm going to frame the first question up here. Are you ready for this fun lightning round?
Is there a buzzer or something? Can we?
No buzzer, because I don't want to stop the flow of consciousness. But we do want to get through a few of these, so we probably won't harp on them too much. But I'm thinking about this first one. So when you have a problem, you have a challenge you're trying to overcome, that you're trying to solve, something that you're trying to work through, the question becomes, what if I did the opposite for 48 hours? And where this question came from was Tim was doing cold calls, smiling and dialing out in his first job. And he found that if he did the opposite, meaning he was calling from 8 to 5, trying to get these business owners, trying to get his clientele on the phone, sell them, it wasn't working. So what did he do? He started to call between 7 and 8:30 in the morning. He started to call from 6 to 7:30. So he did the opposite of what everybody else was doing. He outsold the rest of that office. So Jay, what is your take on doing the opposite? If you've been beating your head up against the wall, trying to solve a problem, trying to get something done, have you ever done the opposite for 48 hours just to kind of see what the outcome is?
I haven't, but I've really just based my approach more often than not on modeling what somebody else has done that's been proven to be successful. I think when you're experimenting or testing, it's pretty easy to try anything and then flip and just trying to be innovative. But I mean, if you're modeling and, consolidating those decades and the days, I think you've got a proven path to get to the place you want to go. I'm searching for an example of where I see that working. I just don't.
I'll jump in and give you an example from my own life. So this happens organically in my life because if something isn't right at the front, or even if it is, if we're thinking about the Eisenhower matrix, if something's not right there, pressing me, hitting me, saying you got to get this done, it usually falls off to somewhere in the background, at least 48 hours, usually 48 days. And so this happens organically for me. And so basically I'll be hot on a topic. I'm going to do this. I'm going to knock this out. I'm going to do it this way. And I go put action in. But if I don't take the action or I'm not getting the results that I want, I can always circle back to the task that I was trying to get done and look at it in a different way. And I get so tunnel focused on one way that it should be done sometimes that organically, when I don't actually get to certain things, it happens, or I see somebody else get that done. And having that mentality of the compressor, of being open to everything and attached to nothing, is kind of where I see our methodology falling into this question, doing the opposite. So it's not being closed-minded to a different approach. And I talk to so many people. You're on so many calls all the time. You get to hear what other people are doing, how they're approaching their lives and situations. And that's a big influence on me as well. So we do a lot of modeling, obviously, with all the reading and learning that we're doing. Reading versus learning is something I want to talk about at some point too. I dropped a Finish Strong Fridays episode, or I will drop one very soon, on the difference between just reading and consuming information and actually learning. Mind has been blown here recently following a guy named Michael Simmons, who has put more time in the books, the study, and has aggregated this information into these courses and this website that is just blowing my mind. He's written 2,000 books. I mean, come on, man. Somebody that's going to spend that much time on something, I'm going to be interested in hearing what he has to say. So we're going to move on to the next one.
Let me drop a pin on what you just said, because I think there's something to take away from that. And so when you step away from the problem, your reticular activating system is still working on the thing, right? Your subconscious is engaged, is solving the problem. That's why sometimes the best thing to do when you're trying to fix something is go to sleep. Because when you go into that rest state, your body continues to work on the problem. And then hopefully you wake up and at times you'll have the answer. And so, if you guys aren't doing some meditation, some relaxation, in addition to, rest and sleeping on the problem, that may help you get through the block. So that was a great point, Logan. I didn't think about that as a strategy. Instead of working on it, stop working on it. You can go cut the grass or wash the car or do dishes or something and get an amazing answer. So that was spot on, man. Thanks.
Yeah. So I've always looked at recipes. When somebody gives you a recipe, like, hey, follow these instructions. And this is why I had a hard time with Tim Ferriss's book to an extent, The 4-Hour Chef. But in that book, he mentions the fact that, look, when you get a recipe, there's 1,000 ways to do that if you're a master chef. And I kind of look at us as master chefs of personal and professional development. We got a lot of other inputs coming from different areas. So what this is a recipe. And you don't have to follow it per se, word by word. But what it does is it gets you thinking. It gets you moving. It gets you excited, inspired about something. And so that's the cool part about a recipe, because when my wife sends me a recipe, I'm like, all right, I know the ingredients. I kind of know the steps, but I know how to cook. I was a chef from 14 to 20, a sous chef. And so I learned the mechanics of cooking. So when I see a recipe, it's great. I know what's in it. I kind of know what they need me to do. But if they tell me to cook it a certain way, I'm like, nah, I was trained by a Le Cordon Bleu chef. And so I'm going to follow that recipe because that's what I did, or that strategy. So this is just the recipe, guys. This is all that is. So take it for what it is at face value, and you have to make it your own. This is a fun question, man. What do you spend a silly amount of money on? How do you scratch your own itch? And so I'm really curious to hear your answer to this.
This is awful. First off, ladies and gentlemen, whenever we have a decompression of the Compression Podcast, you've got to get a Lumbee breakfast burrito. You'll thank me later. The Lumbee breakfast burrito at the live decompression of the Compression Podcast.
100%.
Scratch my own itch. Cars. I am. It's an inefficient use of capital, but I tell you, when you open the garage and you see the thing there, it does something to my soul. Yep. It absolutely does. I can't say enough about it. When I was growing up, I didn't care about 21. 16 was it. Got the license, and I was free, right? Because access to a vehicle, you could go basically wherever you wanted to go, unless you needed a plane or a boat. That for me was kind of the epitome. And so I actually, for a while, stopped counting my birthdays after 16. Felt like I was Peter Pan. But cars it is.
Somebody asked me how old I was the other day, and I told them the wrong number. I forgot how old I was. So there you go. I guess I stopped counting as well. So I'm going to take this in a little bit of a different approach. I spend a silly amount of money on anything that I feel like will create more freedom and sustainability for myself. And so a lot of that comes in regards to books and courses. And I buy courses because I want to see how other people are packaging their information. I want to see what's good, what's not, because I know that's coming in my future way down the road sometime. Is I'm going to try to figure out a way to give back like Ray Dalio does. But I spend a silly amount of money on, I'll show you guys just a few that are just right on my desk here. This is a Lumen. This is taking into account my metabolism that I do every single day. This thing was over $250. Just this little device and this app that I breathe into every single morning to kind of tell me if I'm burning fat or burning carbs and what I should eat. Okay, another one, tracker. I got a watch. I'm not going to buy a tracker that looks like a tracker. I got multiple bands for this watch. So whenever I go to a big business meeting, I can put my leather band on. But you can't tell that's a tracker. But that thing's tracking my heart rate variability, my sleep, my stress, my body battery. So I spend a silly amount of money on certain things like that I know will help me in the future. Same thing with Wim Hof's app and my new meditation app that I've got. Those are both subscription-based apps. Who does that, right? I mean, I do. If I can just get the information, I know it's there. I don't have to search the internet. It saves me 15 minutes. Boom. Right before we jumped on the call, I told you how much my time was worth in regards to an hour. And sometimes it's way, way, way higher. And sometimes it's way, way lower. I want to keep that in the higher realm. And so, a lot of times that I'm thinking about things and my wife's like, man, you got another book coming. You got another course going. You got all this stuff. It's because I know that it's going to create the freedom. What she doesn't, argue about are the results right now. If you're just spending money on a bunch of stuff, especially material things that, aren't necessarily bringing you the joy that you want, you're just keeping up with other people. That's a different story. That's not what we're talking about here. But when I look at my bank accounts, I spend a silly amount of money on food. I love food, and Jay knows I'm going to eat well most of the time. I'm going to drink well most of the time. I spend a silly amount of money on childcare because I want the best care for my kids. And I spend a silly amount of time on things that I feel like will help me elevate to the next level. And so that's how I scratch my own itch, because if you've listened to this podcast, obviously you understand that I'm an achievement-based guy, and growth feels like success for me. And where is success for me? I have no idea why I'm studying economics, why I can't stop thinking about inflation rates. But as I reflect on why I'm doing this and why I'm studying the US government long-term bond yields and understanding how Howard Marks, Peter Mallouk, Charlie Munger, and Warren Buffett are all thinking about these things, because at some point I feel like my subconscious is saying, people are going to ask you that question. Are you going to be ready? Are you going to have an answer? What are you going to say? And the last thing I can do as an individual, as a business owner, is not have a response to something that I haven't thought through. Now, I might not have the answer, but if I haven't thought through something, shame on me. And that's where I'm getting a lot of clout with larger investors, more sophisticated investors, and people, and building that confidence, right? It's the flash rolls. I'm always talking about flash rolls, and not just words, not fancy words kind of buttoned up together. It's understanding the research behind the words. I was in a meeting. I have a listing, a big listing, 180,000 square foot building. It's going to be a tough one. We're going to get it done. But we're sitting there talking about supply chain issues and what's going on in California and Texas. And, thankfully I had read 3 or 4 articles from ITR Economics just recently, and I just rolled off a few things, and I saw 2 guys that are my mentors, way ahead of me in regards to the business world. They've got, one's got 4 kids, one's got 8 kids. So they're kind of where I want to go, right? And I've flashed that off really quickly, and I could just see, boop, I'm like, now I know why Logan is listed. And I've listed both of their properties, and one of them is a real estate broker, and he had me list his property. It's because of that. So I think I spent a silly amount of time on educating this, so I can feel competent. I have some sort of, and you probably have a name for this, but I have some sort of, what do they call the small man syndrome? Napoleon complex. I got some kind of complex inside of me that says, bro, you are not that smart, so you got to study up, and you got to figure that stuff out. And I know I'm not that smart. I know I'm not the smartest man in the room, but I can study, I can understand the mechanics, and I can communicate that in a way that gets people moving. And that's what it's all about, manufacturing opportunity out of thin air. And so that's what that's my answer to the question of what I spend a silly amount of money on.
And that's not silly. Like you're just making investments. What do you waste money on, man? This is all quality of life. Come on, there's got to be something. You're not that efficient. Come on, give me something that's inefficient.
Golly, I'm trying to think of something that's silly. Honestly, dude, if you ask Taylor, I don't spend she would say some of the stuff I spend money on is silly, but that's all the stuff that I just rattled off, and I think
hats. Can we get a hat? Give me something. Come on.
Nothing. I got nothing. Okay. How about this? Sometimes I buy workout equipment that I think I'm going to use all the time. And I actually,
you have a shake weight. Do you have a shake weight?
Shake weight, no. No shake weight over here. No shake weight.
Before we started recording, Logan gave me the bodybuilder flex, both arms over top.
Give it to him, baby. Anyways, let's move on. That was a fun one, man. Let's move on to the next question. All right. What would I do, have, or be if I had $10 million?
Free. That's my number, man. When I'm at 10 million or 55, I'm out. I'm done. Done.
What will you do then?
Only work with people who I think are going to influence the world, not like 10 people, like hundreds of thousands of people. I'll probably still be working with the same people.
Yep.
We will have grown together. But literally, I like today, there are probably some people that have gotten into the space that I'm not sure if they're truly committed to doing whatever it takes for however long it takes. And so, and I don't think they're sure either, if I'm totally, transparent. And so, we're pacing, right? It's kind of this awkward dance where we're trying to figure out each other as partners. And then there's other people I know that are going to just set the world on fire in a good way, right? They're going to ignite passion through people who are going to impact other people. And, you know, you see messages about these folks. And it's like, man, I heard this person on this podcast, and I'm so grateful that you introduced me to them, or, you know, so whatever it is. And it's just like, you know, they got it. And they're not trying to figure out if they have it. And even if they were like a maniac like you, I consider you one of those folks, right? Even if they work like a maniac, right? And they're humble in their God-given ability, they still have the it factor.
Mm.
And you know, there's some guys and gals that are, you know, 28 to 32 that I'm hanging out with, and I'm like, holy smokes, man. Like, when people actually see what you have, it's going to change the way that people live their lives.
Right.
And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the impact. I'm looking to impact the lives of those who are going to show people how to change the way that they live, so that they can actually attain that significance level, which I think everybody knows they need. They just don't have a path to get there.
That's a good answer, man. Legacy, impact, focusing on the people that are actually going to change the world. I'm thinking about this question in a way that is a little bit different. I mean, I enjoy what I do, right, on a regular basis. I think you would say the same. But if I had $10 million, just, you know, not from a net worth standpoint, but from a cash standpoint, sitting in the bank, what would I do differently? Well, I'll lay it out. You know, I'd spend more time with my kids. I'd spend more time with my wife. I'd go on more trips, and I would focus more on reading and writing and creating even more than I am now. I would not be going
20 to
from
30 hours.
What'd you say?
20 to 30 hours a week, ladies and gentlemen. We just talked about this.
20 to 30 hours. And I don't think I would just be going from the loudest to the latest, right? I'm not doing that as much anymore, but I still am. That's kind of what directs me. Now, that being said, I think that the $10 million mark is not really my target. You know, I mean, what's my target is a feeling that I can get up and do what I want to do, knowing that we have leveragers out there working on our behalf. And so, you know, frankly, we're working towards getting to that point. But I think if I had all the time in the world, I had some money sitting in the bank, I would probably just continue to find opportunities like I'm doing in real estate, but in other segments. I'd probably meet with some more people. I'd have no agenda for things. You know, everything's very intentional, very focused, very power impact, driven right now. And that's fine. But I think I'd have a little less, I'm not going to say chutzpah, but I'd have a little less, maybe, you know, drive to be driving the revenue every single day. And, you know, that's something that I can create. I know that, but I do think I'd spend more time in books, more time with my kids, more time with the family, and my wife. I make her feel super special, and more than we already do. And I do that. I probably visit home a little bit more and travel. So that's my answer. It's not a really great one, but it's because, you know, frankly, I get pretty fired up with what I'm doing on a regular basis. I think I get to a point where time slows down. You know, that's the answer. I think that right now time moves this way and that way, and it's gone. And I probably sleep a little bit more, to be honest with you guys. You know, I'd probably get up at 5 maybe, or at 4:33, so I could still beat Jocko up. I work out more, you know, I'd hit the gym. I do fun workouts, you know. I really miss that group atmosphere where I can compete a little bit. I can't compete like I used to with the football, the rowing, and the CrossFit, but I do a little bit more of that. And, you know, I think that's what I would focus on. So, all right. You got any follow up on that? Did you think I was going to answer any other way?
Nah, your priorities are clear, and I think the business still infringes on the time with family more than you wanted to. So that was in alignment. Um, Mark's Rubio Acosta. I know you like that guy. I don't ever say his name right, but he talks about time slowing down and the intentionality of the day. And some other people who I see doing this right now is Bobby and Sophia Castro. They sold that company for $1 billion valuation. And
Yep.
you see them working with their trainer in the morning. You see them spending time and taking trips with the kids and stuff. So yeah, I think that's what everybody wants, is the time to spend it with the people they care for most without worrying about their lifestyle changing.
You talking about that actually brought up another thing. I'd spend more time with the nonprofits that I want to focus on here in Kansas City. Probably buy a big building and make housing free for certain people based on social entrepreneurship and things like that. But part of me, whenever, and Marks keeps reaching out to me, he wants to talk. I'm gonna talk to you, Marks, pretty soon, but I'm not ready, because I'm not ready to give up not give up. I'm not ready to change. Like I said, I got a complex and I got to work through that, but slowing down scares me. And maybe it's just I'd be slowing down in a different way. But I get filled up, man, whenever I got a new challenge to go get. And they'll just be different challenges. But it doesn't feel like the right time. My wife has always said, hey, you're not going to write your book until you've done something. Well, I've done a little bit, we're growing, we're doing some good things. But she said, you always talked about wanting to be the guy up on the stage. And I know that has changed for you. This is her talking to me. But you have to go do something before you can be that guy. And I'm realizing, after taking multiple new personality tests, mostly the one from Ray Dalio, is I have a strong coach inside of me that I did not see before. I got burnt out at Jimmy John's when I was managing all of those people. It was but I wasn't tied to that end result. Now the people that I'm managing, I don't manage, I'm coaching, I'm inspiring, have a direct reflect to our bottom line. And that, my friend, is what fires me up. Making our employees, they see the scheduling, they see the intentionality, they watch some of the videos, not all of them, but they do watch some of them. And they come to me and say, hey, I'm having a really hard time scheduling my most valuable priorities. And I'm like, first off, you use the word. That is awesome. The second piece is, let's sit down for an hour and a half and map this thing out. And boom, I did that, gave 6 to 8 hours back to my acquisitions associate, said, stop doing this. Don't focus on that. Schedule this. Here it is. Let's make it sustainable, small habits. And dude has brought 2 off-market deals in the last 10 days that we've been focused on the scheduling. So I think that there's a lot of that coach that wants to come out as I continue to progress in my own skills. But I think I had a different complex, coaching people. And I had a sales consulting company for a little bit, for 6 months, made good money. But I had this thing where I hadn't done it necessarily yet. So it's hard for me to coach those folks, through that stuff. And so I got to be able to know and feel confident that what I have done or what I'm sharing has brought success to me. So I see this compression continue to increase the impact that it has, not only on the world, but directly inside of FTW Enterprises. So very excited about that. All right, man, moving on. This is one of my favorites. And I'm not going to say how I use this, but the question is, what are the worst things that could happen? Could I get back here? And Tim has a famous TED Talk. Maybe I'll be up on the TED Talk stage talking about how to become a compressor at some point. Maybe, we'll see. But it's called fear setting. Instead of goal setting, fear setting. And I've been on this thread of understanding paralysis by analysis a lot lately. And I think it's because we overthink things, but also we don't think through what the worst that could happen is. If we go to that dark place, we get into the bat cave per se, we go down deep and we figure out what is the worst that could happen and could I get back here? If you can answer that question, the fear somewhat dissipates. Your thoughts on fear setting, and do you utilize this on any regular basis?
I don't, because I'm not fear motivated, right? I'm the eternal optimist, and I'm motivated by the promise of a better future.
Mm.
So for me, fear just goes along for the ride, and we just everything's figure outable from there, right? If I do fear setting, it's only to see what's the very worst case scenario and can I live with that outcome.
Mm.
And if I can live with the outcome, then you do it, right? If you can't, then you got to take a step back and figure out something else. But this is how I coach people through things when they're trying to make a pivotal decision. Are you okay with the absolute possible worst outcome happening? Do you think you can recover from that? And if you can, then there's no reason for you not to do it. That doesn't mean that you don't try to mitigate, but there's no reason for you not to proceed.
And so the question that doesn't pop up here is, what happens if you stay the same? And we're really bad at rationalizing opportunity costs as individuals, as a human race. We have anchoring biases. We have second world thinking. We have the third law of motion by Newton. We've got the Red Queen effect, all models that you guys should jump into that I use on a regular basis. But it says, okay, if you're scared of something, figure out what the worst outcome is, but also figure out what the outcome is if you stay where you are right now. And that's how I keep moving forward. That's how I continue to go forward and not necessarily live in the past. All of those things I think need to be taken into account when you're trying to make a big decision. All right. We got another one. This is one I posed to you in a different way a few weeks ago, but we'll pose it just like Tim does. If you could only work 2 hours per week on your business, what would you do? Put another way from Marx. If you had to pay somebody $5,000 a day to work for you 8 hours a day, which is $1 million a year, and you could not work, what would you have that person do? So let's go Tim's version first, my man. How do you answer that?
Negotiating deals. That is the end all be all. Everything else is just for you to get there where you actually make the money.
What kind of deals?
Real estate transactions would be the game. It's got to be something that's high ticket, It's got to be high ticket, And I've been going through this model because my buddy and I have been talking about him. He's a revenue generation guy. Like, that's his game, right? Just like you generate revenue, you find deals. And he's like, look, man, there's a problem that most businesses have. They don't have a premium product. And they have no idea how to set it up. It's a different packaging. It may require different branding, but if they can figure that out, their hourly rate goes up dramatically from a fulfillment standpoint. I agree with you. But he was like, it doesn't make sense for people to do this if there's not and threshold was kind of the word we use for that ticket, right? And so I talked to the guys at GoBundance this week, and that's a $10K membership fee.
Yep.
For a year, right? And then that includes nothing from a trip standpoint. It just gets you into a GoPod.
Right.
There's an upper level, a more exclusive group that you could get into for $15,000. There's another mastermind group. I've been studying masterminds in case you guys haven't noticed lately. And it's what is it? Creative Genius or Collective Genius. They've got $100,000 membership fee. And, it's like, well, what do you get for that? Right? Are they living your life for you is what a lot of people would say. But I mean, if you can write the check to get into that room, then what's on the backside of that?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I know you joined a mastermind this year. That was a 5-figure check. And so, what is the high ticket product? What value can you create or perceived value can you create for the people that are part of that group? And from there, how do you reduce your input, your influence, your actual time commitment in order to turn a profit. And I mean, you described to me something today that, I value a tremendous amount, basically making money out of nothing. Right. And without a whole lot of investment. But, you and I have been talking about this a lot. And, I'm on a tangent. You guys have to forgive me, but I'm just connecting all the dots of these conversations that we have in a scattered fashion that you aren't privy to. But we've talked about brand and product and accomplishment and achievement and, what's the order and what actually matters. And, at the end of the day, if you've got a brand, the marketplace sees you a certain way, money comes to your brand. It does. It does. And if you got a primo brand that's got some quality associated with it and ability to actually deliver on the promises made, people will be willing to give you more.
Yeah.
For the exact same service. And that is, I think, is just the magic, man. So the person that can either figure out how to negotiate deals or figure out the branding, that's who you pay. Right? Because everything else comes from that.
Is it negotiating deals or is it finding the deals?
I think it's negotiating the deals. People get leads all the time and fumble them. Right? It's no different than the center, and you play line a little bit, right? The center puts the ball in the quarterback hand and he drops it. Is it him having a ball or is it him making a play with it? Mm-hmm. Right? It's absolutely negotiation, getting the deal done, right? If you can't get all the terms agreed to, it doesn't matter that you got a building. It doesn't matter that you have money. It doesn't matter that you can operate if you can't get the deal across the line. And, that's, part of my value proposition when people are going through their deals is I'm going to get you in a place where you pay less and you make more. Period. Right?
Period. Makes sense. I think the way I would approach this is a little different now, but very clear on what I need to do for our business. Find the money, find the deals. So one of the hours would be spent with the money. So that would either be in person or on the phone. I'd have 4 15-minute conversations with capital partners. The other hour I would spend with my acquisitions associate, with him peppering me with questions on who he should prospect, what he should say, and how he should position our company. Those are the two things that I would do, because relationships are what have propelled our business. I've been recently asked quite a few times and to speak on a topic that I have not done a lot of speaking on, but everybody sees the hockey stick growth. They're curious to know how Parker, Corey, and myself work together so well. And and how that came to be. That's not fleshed out yet, right? But I do see that there's some gel that's holding that together. There's a little bit of luck that came with having the finance, having the brand, which is me, having the finance background and having the real estate background. All three of those things kind of came together to create this superpower that is working out in the world. So that's what I would do if I only had 2 hours to work on my business. The rest of the time, I suppose, if I wasn't working on my business, would be learning about my business. We're coming up on time, Jay, but I got one other question out of Tim's book or list of questions. And then I have one that I'm gonna throw in here. We're actually gonna break something down for the listeners. But how about this? Instead of adding certain things into your life to try to fix problems, what if I could only subtract to solve problems? Right? So it's that essentialism kind of mentality. What can I subtract? Or what if I could only subtract to solve problems? How do you think about this?
Yeah, I was thinking about it on the run this morning, and it's something that I've been wrestling with for a while now. And the question that I kind of augment this too is, can you minimize yourself? Grant Cardone talks about it. It's not original thought. This is Grant's thought. you can't minimize yourself into wealth. You can't minimize yourself into wealth. Most things are solved out of you having the capacity to write a check or allocate time to it. And so we live in a world right now where, fire is all the rage, and it's okay, how little can I do, or how little can I live on, instead of maximizing your capacity to earn. And it's neither good nor bad, but just at some point, where do you say, hey, the quality of life, and I want to get back to what you said, right? You want to live a high quality of life. You think, you listen to the way you said you silly amounts of money that you spend. It's all investments in improving the quality of life. And so for me, I was driving a car earlier this year that I had since 2011. And it had 266,000 miles on it. And I put a fair amount of miles on cars, and I was like, I could buy a car, but why would I? I don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about it some more, and I was like, but you're a car guy. So can you be a car guy if you don't have a car? And, I posed that question to a couple of other folks who consider themselves to be car guys. And they were like, yeah, of course. You just like seeing cars. I was like, but am I a spectator or am I a player?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't go back to people with that. I kept that one to myself. Am I a spectator or am I a player? And, this is kind of like from an operator standpoint. There's a lot of people who want to be in multifamily real estate or commercial real estate in general. And there's a question of whether or not you want to be on the field, a warrior, like the folks at FTW,
Mm-hmm.
or do you want to be in the stands cheering and watching? And I consider those folks to be LPs. They're just kind of along for the ride, right? I interviewed a guy yesterday on Multifamily Missteps. They had a fraud property manager overstated earnings. They had a flood. It was in Houston, first floor of all the buildings, because they were like 3 blocks away from the bay. They had a fire where 3 kids died, and then they had a pandemic. And, the guy was an LP. He's telling the story. He couldn't do anything about the deal. He wasn't an operator. You know what the operator did? He put $500,000 into the deal to keep it going instead of doing the capital call and making everybody else's problem. To me, that's what a warrior does, right?
Right.
But, the folks who are, in the stands watching and cheering, I used to sit on the top of the box when I call football games, right? And, they would yell at the field about what they thought should be done. Most of it had no basis. They weren't actually in it. They weren't fighting the good fight, right? And so, I don't know where I'm going, but what I will say at the end of the day is, man, you got to be in the game. Like, you have to live out what the things that you say that you are. You talked about walking the walk so you don't have to talk the talk. I think you got to do both. I think you got to talk the talk so people can look at you and check and see if you're walking the walk.
Yeah.
And you better be walking the walk, because when they hear you talking the talk, they're going to want to know if you're walking the walk, right? And so I think you just have to be true to it all the way through, and trying to minimize, cut all the things out of your life, even if they're things that you enjoy, is only the appropriate approach if you've got something that's a higher priority, right? Some people work and work and work, and they cut their family out their life because they feel like they got to have more money in order to be accepted or loved by their spouse, or be able to pay for their private school for their kids. Maybe that's not the highest priority.
Yeah.
And so the minimization just goes back to prioritization. And I think if your priorities are big enough, if your why is big enough, you'll figure out how to fund them. And that's where I've landed on. I believe that your gifts will make room for you if you are truly in alignment with your purpose.
Yep. Great answer. And I appreciate the going in the rabbit hole a little bit on this. I'm going to keep it very simple. I don't have much to add. And Henry David Thoreau out at Walden Pond just, went out to the woods and started writing. And he came back and he said, somebody asked him, what'd you take away from all that time out in the woods by yourself? Simplify, simplify, simplify. To which Ralph Waldo Emerson said, one simplify would suffice. So at the end of the day, you got to cut stuff out. You got to get rid of the noise and you got to simplify things. So I always say that if there's something that's in the view that you can't see past and you're trying to do all these other things, the one thing that's blaring you and fogging your lens up, you got to take care of that thing first. And a lot of times it's just removing that out. And it's a lot of bad habits. It's a lot of bad relationships. And it's the biases that we hold from our past experiences. So moving on to an interesting one that I'm going to pose to you. And this is a more of a way to think through a problem or a challenge. Okay. So this is like a mental process. So I'm going to give an example. It's real estate focused. Jerome and I kind of teed him up a little bit this morning, but Jerome and I were messaging back and forth because, I get a lot of questions from investors on where the economy is headed, where interest rates are going, when they're going to go up, when they're going to go down. When somebody asks you a question that you cannot logically answer, how do you go about breaking the question or the problem or the challenge down and then giving or delivering a message in a way that hopefully continues the process forward? Meaning, Logan, what's going to happen with interest rates in 5 years? So literally telling me to get my crystal ball out and try to figure that out. I don't know what the question is for you, Jerome, but I'm sure with you, your clients, with what you've got going on in your business, there's probably a question that can't hardly be answered definitively. How do you think about actually going through that mental process of answering that and giving a logical explanation?
I find a model or tell them I don't know, but I can't predict the future, right? The future, in my opinion, is based on the work that you do today. The yogis have this phrase, may your work be your prayer, right? And so I think the decisions that we're making right now are going to set us up for what's going to happen 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now. And if you're not doing the work, if you're taking a break, if you're relaxing, then you're going to be working 4, 5, 10 years from now. If you're working like a maniac and making things happen and creating opportunity and experiences and having achievement, then it's likely that you'll be able to leverage that into revenue producing activities that don't take a whole bunch of your time. I have the same questions about the stuff that we own in real estate, right? Are we going to sell? I had that conversation yesterday. When are we going to sell the project? And we got this other one that's on the market. And, when's that one going to go into contract and close? And, oh, well, you're holding out for a higher price on this one. Maybe we should just let it go and be done with it. Look, man, it's all assumptions. I don't think anybody's going to time the market. I don't care how good you are. And so I think you just have to wade in and, again, go back to what I think is a very worst case scenario. Right? What's the worst that could happen? Are you okay with that? If you're not okay, don't do it. If you are okay and you see some upside to it, go in head first and do everything that you can in order to make the thing work. May your work be your prayer, man.
Let me give the way that I've tried to be thinking about situations like this. I always go back to a mental model. Okay. So I'm going to pull one from the military, the OODA methodology: observe, orient, decide, act. All right. So the first one is observe, figure out what's going on. Second one is orient yourself to what's happening and figure out what you want to do. The next one is decide on that and then actually act on it. So the way I break this question down a lot is, okay, if I'm going to observe, I got to understand the market. I got to understand the fundamentals. That's why I'm studying principles of macroeconomics. That's why I'm studying all these things. The circular reference that I put out there, the circular model that I put out there on LinkedIn earlier this week. But I've come down to a conclusion on the way that I'm going to frame, I think, my answer as I come into capital raising mode to this. And I've pulled a lot of this from Peter and Howard and some other folks. But I heard Peter say that. So first of all, I'm going to observe. Okay. So I'm going to observe and this is a very specific example to my business, guys, but you'll have an opportunity to see how I'm thinking through this. So the Fed's balance sheet is at $27 trillion now. All right. The only way for for the federal government to pay that down, they can't do it through taxes. It's just not going to happen. The math just doesn't work. The other way is to create inflation. Okay. So you inflate the prices of people's wages, of people's homes, of their stock portfolio, so they feel wealthier. They might be on paper 20% wealthier on from a net worth standpoint, but their buying power is actually 10% of what they just gained. So they're actually have less buying power, but they feel a lot wealthier. And there's a lot of psychology that goes into the market, the invisible hand, as Adam Smith said. So then you think about what causes inflation. It's supply issues, it's demand issues, and it's the Fed pumping money back in. We saw yesterday that the Fed is starting to taper some of their quantitative easing that we've seen in the past. They're selling off one of their bond portfolios, which is not that big, but that does reflect kind of how they're feeling about the market. And then I look at the US government 10-year bond yields through that same period. And I see, because the long-term yield is a fluctuation and it's a function of the marketplace. So versus the short-term Fed rate that you see that everybody's talking about from an interest rate standpoint. So far this year, the 10-year yield has returned to its pre-COVID level and nothing more than that. So if that 10-year, that long-term yield bond continues to increase, then we might see that the Fed or the marketplace thinks that inflation is going to come and we're going to have to do something about that. Well, what do you do about that? Well, there's different ways that you can approach that. And then I go back to the Fed's stance and what they've actually said in their reports. And then after we've talked about all of that, I move over to how commercial real estate is a hedge against potential rising inflation. And I think that's the most complete model, the OODA model, or the way that I'm going to work through kind of responding to these questions that I get. That gives some background, it gives some fundamentals, and it also says that Howard Marks is always talking about he doesn't answer questions that start with the word when. It's understanding where we are at and making decisions based on that. And so that's one way I'm trying to frame this response up to people. At least they know that I've thought through that. But when you have a question that's been posed to you that you do not have the answer to, you have to think through the OODA model and figure out what you're going to do. There's another one that you can simply say it's the 3 A's: act, assess, adjust. It's a little bit different. It's more on the action side, but I love the observe, understand, orient yourself to it, get realistic, get relative, decide on where your stance is, and then go take some action on that. So frankly, that's how I'm approaching that. What are your thoughts? Is that complete enough? Not necessarily from the talking points that I have around the specific question, but the model in and of itself. Is that a good framework to use to respond to questions that really there is no definitive answer to?
Yeah, my dad was a military man, and they figured out a lot of this stuff. And, it's probably even more like, I think I heard Goggins talk about it, or maybe it was Jocko, right? It's just, when they're on a tactical mission, how do we make sure that everybody gets out of here alive? And I think if you're living your life that way, and it's a very rigorous process, right? Most people are just winging it. So that frame and structure around it, I think, is going to help you get to a better answer. 1,000%.
All right, guys, hope you found value in today's episode. It's a little less focused on the growth towards the 100 million mark, but I can tell you we got a big pipeline. It's looking good. We're feeling really great about it. Got some awesome new projects working using the leveragers. Thank you for tuning in. Go check out Tim Ferriss's books. He's a great aggregator, is why I love to listen to him. I suppose we should end on a quote today. And Jerome, you have any quotes off the top of your head that you want to just drop in there right now on the spot? Something that is on the tip of your mind. Don't think too much, just act.
Oh, I got my sticker. It says I took the red pill. That's my quote.
You're going to hear more about the red pill coming up in an extremely exciting event that Jerome is putting on. My beautiful wife and children will be there. I'm not going to tease it too much. I'm going to allow you to do that when the time is right, but super excited about that and everything that we've got going on. So stay focused, be a compressor, change the questions that you're asking yourself, and watch your life change. Thank you so much, Jerome, for being here once again.
This is outstanding.
Hey, compressors, if something you heard struck you, made you feel a little bit uncomfortable, good. Head on over to compressionpodcast.com. And then you can also subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast at. If you feel inclined to, please leave us a review. It's obviously helpful. But instead, I'm going to call you out today. I'm going to call you out and make sure that you do your part, sharing this message by sharing it with one person that might need to hear what we talked about today. Be great. Nothing else pays.